Of all the phones I've reviewed in the past few years, I don't think I've been this excited about any of them. This is the Galaxy Z Flip 3. Now this is the first time I'm reviewing a flip or fold phone from Samsung. This means that Samsung has had 2 years and 2 generations of the folding and flipping phones before this one. So all of my thoughts, impressions, and the review that I'm giving you guys is from the perspective of a smartphone review, not more of flipping or folding phone review. Let me explain. The way I and most tech reviewers will look at it is that the folding phones should be comparable to the traditional flagship phones that cost the same amount of money or even lesser than this. I mean, it should satisfy everything that those flagship phones do, in addition to having the bonus feature of being able to flip the screen or fold the screen. There should be no compromise from other flagships or phones in terms of features and performance, just because this can flip. So keeping that in mind, we're going to start with the build quality and the design on this. The new design is pretty sleek. It looks and feels more complete and polished. The redesign from the previous generations makes it look a lot more well thought out and sophisticated. The hinge now is even more sturdy and holds the phone pretty much at any angle you want with ease. And lastly, obviously, it's incredibly satisfying to close the fold down. I feel like, honestly, during this review, I opened and shut it like 1,000 times just because of how satisfying it really is. It also finally happens to be IPX8 water resistant. So obviously, don't be throwing it around in sand or dust because that will damage the phone. But in a splash of water, dropping it in the pool for a few seconds or using it in the rain, you'll be perfectly fine. At the bottom, you've got the Type-C input and the noise-canceling microphone, bottom-facing speaker. At the top, we have the noise-canceling microphone as well. You also have the speaker grill integration at the top to give you a surround sound for the audio. Now, the power button is on the right side, integrated with the fingerprint sensor on the top half of the phone, along with the volume rockers. I wasn't really happy with the positioning of the power button and volume rockers. I do feel like it's way too high up for me to readjust my grip every single time. I mean, it's not terrible or a deal breaker. It's just a little bit annoying to have to readjust your grip every single time. Really quick, if this is the first time you've come across our channel, be sure to subscribe for more content like this. Now that we're done with the build quality and design, let's move over to the display on this. I mean, that is actually one of the most important aspects of a foldable screen. The main characteristic on the Flip 3 is the fact that it flips open to turn into a traditional smartphone. Now, when unfolded, the display is actually pretty tall. It's a 6.7-inch Full HD Plus Dynamic AMOLED 2X Infinity Flex display with an aspect ratio of 21:9. Now, your traditional smartphone aspect ratio is about 16:9, so this is definitely a lot taller than that. This also finally supports 120Hz of refresh rate and also has HDR10 Plus support and a peak brightness of 1200 nits. I remember on the previous folds, a lot of people had the issue of the brightness not being good enough and the refresh rate being maxed at 60. So this really addresses that and it steps up the level quite a bit. The crease is definitely still here and quite a bit noticeable. It's not more noticeable or less noticeable than before. It's kind of exactly the same. It is right in the middle, so not only will you be able to see it, you also feel it quite a lot. More often than on the Galaxy Fold, for example, because of its positioning. So if you're scrolling on social media or whatever, you will run into that with your thumb every now and then. Now, that's not necessarily a problem. Obviously, it is something you need to get used to. And again, if you really focus on the content of the screen enough, you don't really notice it. But yeah, again, at certain angles, obviously, you're going to see that bend, especially if you're scrolling up and down. Content seems to like bend inwards there, which can be a little bit taking away from the experience kind of thing. So hopefully that's something that can be addressed in the next generations of the folding phones, where they figure out a way to make it flush and completely straight. Now onto what's drastically different from the Fold 2, the external covered display. Samsung has now given us a much larger outer cover screen on the Flip 3 that's up to 4 times bigger than the Flip 2. This outer screen can further be customized to look exactly how you want it to look. You can add on a few more widgets, and obviously it's great for viewing your notifications as well at a glance. Also, if you tap on a notification on here quickly and open up the folding display, it takes you straight to that notification within the app. One thing I found really cool about the way they've done this is if you turn the volume up and down from here, obviously up means up, down means down. But when you fold it down, it kind of gets reversed. But in this case, when you do close it, they kind of reverse it for you automatically. So up will still be up and down will still be down. Pretty cool touch. Now, personally, I was curious about whether or not this is more of a gimmick or I'll be using this outer display often. Surprisingly, having this external display on the outside reduced my usage and my need to check my phone as often. I could quickly glance at notifications, change the music, set timer, all that kind of stuff without having to rely on opening my phone every now and then. I use it a lot more than I expected after getting used to it, and setting it down on the table and quickly reaching for it, just quickly checking if I have notifications, pretty convenient. But now moving on to a bigger functionality of the outer screen, which is its ability to use it as a viewfinder for the back cameras. The great thing about both the Fold and the Flip is the fact that you can use the back cameras to take selfies or videos of yourself and get the best quality possible. You can easily switch between the photo mode and the video mode by swiping left or right, and then you can swipe up or down to switch the different lenses. If you tap on the screen, it'll take the picture or the video, or you can use the volume buttons as well as the palm shutter where you show your palm to it and it automatically starts the timer. It is pretty important to note that the pictures taken in this mode are only going to be square shaped. So it's a 1:1 aspect ratio. So you don't really get the full image. It's going to be restricted to a square and you can't really change that. You've got two 12 megapixel cameras at the back, both for the wide angle lens as well as the ultra wide angle lens. Looking at the image quality itself, it's pretty average. Nothing really spectacular here. It's neither amazing nor is it terrible. The images have decent colors, contrast, and HDR levels. The video goes all the way up to 4K 60 FPS, and it looks pretty much the same as most Samsung smartphones, a little bit lacking compared to obviously the flagship quality. The front camera on here is a 10 megapixel camera, but it is also capable of recording in 4K at 60 FPS. Image quality, pretty standard, nothing really spectacular. Now on to something I'm not a huge fan of, which is the battery. It's a pretty small 3300 milliamp hour battery split between both the panels, the top and the bottom. Given that it's powering a 120 Hz AMOLED display, you can expect the battery to drain pretty quickly. Now this can be a bit of a bummer, but it's kind of expected. I mean, you have a folding phone in your pocket that can be folded open to be a traditional smartphone and then closed down to a size this small. So obviously you have to compromise. Again, I'm not the happiest about it, but I understand it. You can get from 4 to 5 hours of screen on time with medium to slightly higher than medium usage. It's just pretty okay. Something I was surprised about how much I liked was the sound quality. The speakers on here are pretty good. So you do have the bottom facing speaker, but the top earpiece also acts as a second speaker. Pretty good separation. I actually think they did a very good job with the speaker system on here. Under the hood, you're getting some pretty powerful, decent performance. You've got the 5nm Snapdragon 888 processor with up to 8 gigs of RAM and 256 GB of storage, which is more than capable of giving you top of the line performance when it comes to multitasking or gaming. I was able to run Call of Duty Mobile with max frame rate and max graphics, and the experience was pretty enjoyable. Obviously, the size of the screen being so tall was a little bit disturbing, I guess, in that sense. I couldn't move my hand around as much, but performance-wise, really great. Even using it in the split view mode for multitasking was plenty fun, and the processor is, again, more than capable of handling that. Keep in mind, though, that doing it this way is obviously going to drain that battery a lot quicker. But the split of the display, being able to use two applications at the same time, especially with a foldable phone, is pretty cool. But as you can see, because of that really tall, narrow display, there's quite a bit of video that's lost on the left and right. And if you zoom in, you lose quite a bit at the top and bottom. It's kind of the same issue I was having with the folding phone, but it is what it is, I guess. If you're making a phone that can fold down to a square sort of shape and you open it up, obviously, it's going to be significantly longer. But I do wish the screen was somehow optimized to give me more real estate. So going back to what I started this video off by saying, does this act like a great standalone smartphone when it's opened up without any compromises? Yes and no. There's some things on here that for the given price, other phones, even their own flagships, could do twice or 3 times better than this, like the battery performance and the camera performance. So yeah, that standalone for a phone is definitely not the best. But when you take into account the foldability of this and how it's able to go from a pocketable square to a fully functioning solid smartphone, I'd say it's a lot easier to recommend than the previous generation of fold phones. Best way to look at this is it's an above average phone, maybe a 7.5, 8 out of 10, with the ability to flip, which adds on a little more points. So yeah, I would recommend this. Anyway, that's about all we have. If you guys were more keen about the folding phone, we've also done a full review on that. You guys can check that out. Really hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you did, a like would be appreciated, and we'll see you again in the next video. Until then,